Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. Joining me is Bill Scher, blogger at Campaign for America's Future and liberaloasis.com. Bill, so many questions now rising, including about whether Mitt Romney is sabotaging his own campaign by simply stepping foot in Europe, and so many other questions. But let's start with polling. I'm seeing a lot of electoral vote predictors which are skewing really heavily towards President Obama. And at the same time, we see a number of different national polls where it's much closer, maybe Romney ahead by the margin of error, maybe not. What do you think is more valuable to look at right now?
Well, on one hand, the Electoral College is the end game, and so you would think state by state is more important. But a lot of those online Electoral College predictors will take a state poll that shows a 2-point lead and then just give it to one person, and that might give a false sense of certitude when things are still really very close. The national and also state-by-state polling can really vary very heavily in quality. I think, most of your national polls, there are obviously some outliers like Rasmussen, who I don't trust at all. I don't trust the Gallup tracking poll for a couple reasons. One, Huffington Post showed they had a methodological flaw in recent years. And also tracking polls, day-to-day polls are not really designed to give you accurate snapshots. They're designed to give you sense of momentum. So I tend to ignore those and look at some of the big ones like the New York Times and NBC and Pew. And if you look at the national polling, they tend to range from dead heat to Obama plus 10 in the most recent Pew. You don't see big Romney leads in any legitimate national polling. And that, to me, is the biggest indicator that this race leans Obama and has leaned Obama for some time.
Okay, yeah, and we're actually going to have Scott Keeter from Pew Research Center on Wednesday to look at not only what polls we have for this race, but to compare similar polls in early August in previous presidential campaigns. So we're going to get into some of the minutia of that. As far as Mitt Romney and this European gaffe trip, which was just incredible, I've started to get the sense that maybe Mitt Romney doesn't really want to be president. And I know that it's a lot of work to run for president if you don't really want to be president. But my sense is, George Romney, his father, a known politician and kind of drafted in some way, given his kind of moderate perception as a result of being governor of our state of Massachusetts here. Maybe this is not something deep down he really wants to do. And the way that we're seeing that is that the guy just can't keep it together to have a consistent view on any issue, and he goes to Europe, and it's just a total disaster. I mean, is there anything to the idea that Romney was pushed into running?
I don't accept that. He's been running for this job for a very long time now. He's basically been running since 2006. And that's a lot of years to put into a project that your heart's not really into. Maybe you do it for like 6 months on a draft, but not for this long a period of time. I do think that he is very unnatural on the stump, and people are going to talk about this in a personal way, that he's not a good candidate, or he's not or he's socially awkward and that sort of thing. But I think this comes a lot more down to policy positions. He's awkward because he can't deliver a conservative message comfortably because he knows deep down that it's not popular nationally. It's not popular to push tax cuts for the rich. It's not popular to push going back to looser regulations on corporations. Most people don't blame Obama for the economy. They might be frustrated with him for certain things, but you still ask, who do you blame for this? They say Bush and not Obama. That tells you that people remember what got us in this crisis, but Romney is not a bold enough or creative enough person to break away from conservative orthodoxy and communicate a new brand of republicanism to the public, and therefore he is caught between maybe what he thinks makes political sense and what his base demands of him, and that leads to a lot of mistakes and a lot of flip-flopping, a lot of contradictions.
Yeah, I mean, as a politician, of course, Mitt Romney disgusts me, but I have to admit that he's not a stupid guy, and I just don't understand why he's not able to put together a coherent explanation of, okay, this is why my position on X issue appears to have wavered over time. Here's my position now, and here's why you shouldn't be worried about this perceived wavering that I've had. Why can't he just do that? Why can't someone explain to him what to say?
Well, the wavering comes back to being unable to talk straight to his own party's base. Let me give you an example of what he could do if he had more political freedom.
Yeah.
He might say, you know what? I was in the private sector for a long time. I learned a lot about what makes the economy work, but I also learned that it caused a lot of damage. You know, when jobs move overseas, maybe it's good for investors, but it's bad for some working families. When I joined the public sector as governor, I did things to prevent that, to cushion those blows. I did Romney Care. I cared about what happened to people, and I took on the conservative base. He can't make that argument without offending the conservative base. He doesn't trust that they'll be with them regardless because they might go third party or stay home. But that would be a way to meld his private sector and public sector experience. He refuses to do that. And therefore, he's left sounding very awkward and very superficial because he can't go deep in any policy area.
Yeah, I mean, of course, mentioning Romney Care in any kind of positive light is a complete taboo subject at this point for Mitt Romney. You know, speaking of the private sector experience, I had Babe Buchanan on. I think it was, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago. And I asked her a couple of times, what evidence do we have? She's advising Romney. What evidence do we have that being a private sector guy and a good business person would lead to being a good president? You know, who can we point to? And she wanted to deflect and say, well, what we know is that Obama didn't have that experience and he's bad. And that's Babe Buchanan, a Romney advisor. I'm not hearing them being able to make the argument, the connection between he's a private sector success and therefore will be a good president. In other words, they repeat it. But when you get into the logic of why that would be, I haven't heard a compelling argument. Is there anyone making a compelling case?
Well, no, their campaign strategy is keep all the focus on Obama. If people don't hate Obama and aren't ready to fire Obama, then what's the point? They'll never switch horses in midstream otherwise. There's a certain degree of logic to that, but it bumps up against the fact that, one, like I said, people don't blame Obama for the economy. Even if there's a degree of frustration with them, they accept that he was dealt with an extremely bad hand coming in, and it's going to take some time to get out of the ditch that we're in. And so if he doesn't have a positive case to make for himself, he's caught hoping that people will turn on Obama in a pronounced degree in a matter of weeks, when that hasn't happened yet. So that's a lot of eggs to put in one basket, and it does question whether they have way too narrow a strategy to actually pull this off in 10 weeks.
Last thing I want to touch on in the little time we have left is a vice presidential pick. Weeks ago, there was a rumor that we might hear within days. That didn't happen. What do you think the timing is most likely at this point, and who do you think is running at the head of that race?
You know, timing is a bit of a, obviously there's only so many days left before the convention. You know, it's really a question of do they do it, you know, this week during the Olympics because they want to have a guy on the hustings earlier, or they go closer to the convention, have more drama around the convention, and that I can't be a mind reader there. What I am interested in looking at is, does he pick someone closer to his own personal brand? You know, no frills, button down, which would be a Rob Portman or a Tim Pawlenty type, maybe a Bobby Jindal. And that's what most of the speculation has been. But in recent days, you're seeing this grassroots push for Paul Ryan.
Oh, boy.
And saying, you need someone who's going to be a game changer, who's going to really take it to Obama on debt issues and fiscal issues, and that means a bold embrace of the Ryan House Republican budget, which effectively ends Medicare as we know it. And if Romney does that, that tells you a couple things. One, he feels he's in a weak position and has to throw a long ball to be a quote-unquote game changer, which was the McCain logic for picking Palin, and you see how that worked out. Going against his gut to listen to the squeakier wheels in his base. And I'll tell you something, someone else who did that. John Kerry did that with John Edwards. John Kerry wanted to pick Dick Gephardt, not a flashy guy, not great on the stump, but he might have brought in Missouri, and if he brought in Missouri, he would have won the race. But he listened to some of the people in the party base who really don't have a great sense of things. People in the base don't know what they're talking about. They assumed that John Edwards would be this game-changing pick, bring in the South, bring in white working class, and he was a total bust in 2004. Romney might make that same mistake, maybe tenfold, if he picks Paul Ryan.
All right, well, I hope he goes with Ed Brendel's suggestion of Michelle Bachmann, but I think I can't hold my breath. Bill Scher, Campaign for America's Future, liberaloasis.com. Thanks as always, Bill. We'll take a break and be back with more after this.